I'm Dan Tommaso. Weather Wagers this week is going where we've never gone before. How about into one of our hosts' backyard? Brett, what a serene scene behind you there on this early morning.
Well, I'm trying to get some landscaping work done. It's a beautiful day, and I had to take it. And this time of year, we all want to be outside, and with our schedules, it gets a little tough. So, well, you were pinch hitting in at the office today. I'm actually out trying to get a little yard work done, but there's always time to talk sports. There's always time for weather wagers. So I'm just, remoting in, beaming in, and happy to be doing it.
Well, we appreciate it. And yard work, whether you're at your own backyard or at the ballpark, always important. I know that was kind of the focus of the White Sox series with the Phillies here this past week, talking about some of the issues of the grass and the grounds not softening up yet, that it was kind of a tough playing surface. And if you've kept up with the team, Edmundo Sosa has been having some back issues, so we haven't seen him now for a couple of days. But, Brett, hopefully your yard is perking up faster than the White Sox home field.
It looks nice for now, but it never lasts. And I don't know why we spend all this money on mulch when within 2 to 3 weeks it looks like crap again anyway. But for late April into about Mother's Day or maybe mid-May, maybe Memorial Day, if you could stretch it, it looks nice. And you do feel, don't we as guys and maybe some ladies out there do this, don't you feel a sense of accomplishment after you do yard work? I feel like Tim the Tool Man. You feel good about it.
I said on the morning show this morning, there's something that's therapeutic about watching the grass get cut and your lines and everything showing up and how you sculpt everything.
Yeah,
I love it.
I'm not that good though. I can't do. I mean, it looks good. The lines are okay, but I can't purposefully sculpt anything.
Oh yeah, not me either. Although our fill-in meteorologist here is really into yard work. If you want to see some good-looking yards, yeah, Michael Brullo on Twitter posts all his different checkerboard patterns and everything he gets into. So if you have a nice riding mower, which I do not, I still use a push mower.
Me too. My yard isn't that big because it's all landscaped.
Well, so you got your work cut out for you then, my friend.
I do. It's going to be a busy day. So let's get into baseball here. And as you mentioned, weather again having an impact. You have highlighted several series. If we could just talk about the big picture here for a second, moving into the weekend. So again, we're not giving necessarily our picks for baseball games, at least not right now. What we're trying to do on weather wagers here as the season gets started this spring is try to pick out series that we think are going to be impacted and may have some rainouts or rain delays over the weekend. We're talking about weekend series here, and there's going to be a pretty potent front moving from west to east across the country this weekend. It's going to be a quick hitter. I know that we need some rain in the east, and it's not going to provide us much, just enough for the lawns and gardens to get a quick drink. But as it traverses from the Midwest across the east, it could potentially, depending on the timing here, Dan, have an impact on several series. And why don't you talk about the front and then some of the series that you're highlighting that you think might have a chance to be impacted?
Yeah, so everyone at home can see this precision cast graphic showing the front moving west to east, and it really becomes more of an issue for the eastern half of the United States by late Friday into Saturday, and that's when we're timing out rain locally. But we're looking at certain series here, whether it's the Rockies coming into the Phillies, so Citizens Bank Park playing host to 4 games starting Thursday through Sunday. I'm a little bit worried. Go ahead.
No. Finish your thought about you're a little bit worried, but then I want to make a comment.
I'm a little bit worried about Saturday. So Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening is really the time frame for them. And they just got out of a doubleheader here this week. So Wednesday was a doubleheader for the Phillies. Don't know if you want to do 2 in 1 week.
No, probably not. And but they split it, and that's what you're looking to do. They got it done out in Chicago, and they won the series. But this is what the doctor ordered. We're going to just briefly talk about the Phillies coming up because they continue to struggle in certain aspects. But when you look at some of the numbers, they're encouraging. And Dan, I would suggest that the Rockies coming to town is a good thing.
Yeah, let's hope they keep the home runs in the ballpark, just simple flyouts and not over the wall at CBP. So All right, that's the Phillies. A little bit farther west of the mountains, the Reds and Pirates in a similar circumstance. The Pirates actually are above 500 and playing some pretty good baseball. The Reds, who we've seen have their flaws, but they have some good starting pitching. So again, pitching, the name of the game right now in April, who comes out hot, usually has a pretty decent record. The Reds just below 500. And then let's wrap up with some AL East games. We have the Tigers visiting the Orioles. We haven't mentioned much about the Orioles so far this year. Off to kind of a so-so start, but two teams that could hit the cover off the ball, the Blue Jays and the Yankees, playing in the Bronx here this week, and that should be a fun early season series with a lot of runs scored. I know Aaron Judge is coming into the series hot, but Giancarlo Stanton on the injured list. So these games in particular, Saturday is a problem, possibly into Sunday for the Bronx as well. Some leftover showers in the morning, keeping the field damp. But Brett, I know you've been kind of the pessimist here. Are you going to be pessimistic about Saturday night's forecast?
Well, I think the timing may work out. So let's go series by series here, and I'll get some quick thoughts. First, the Reds at the Pirates. I mean, that could have an impact day on Saturday. What time is their game on Saturday?
Yeah, let me quickly look that up. A lot of these are now afternoon games early in the season, but let me look up the timing on Saturday in particular.
My concern for the Reds and the Pirates is going to be that Saturday afternoon window. If they're playing like at 4:05, that's going to be an issue.
Well, it's just as bad. 6:35 is their start time in Pittsburgh, so not great.
Yeah, because I think when we're talking about Eastern Pennsylvania, when we get into the Phillies, that's more of a Saturday night event. So in Western PA, late afternoon, early evening, they probably are going to be impacted by rainfall.
Yeah, and on top of that, the Phillies start at 4:05, which I think could put them right in the crosshairs of either starting the game with a postponement or getting a couple of innings in and then having to shut it down, which is always the worst case scenario.
Well, but 4:05 may work out for them. I mean, I'm not expecting rain in Philly until after 8 o'clock, right?
Yeah, as long as it's crisp and it's moving along, as long as there's not a ton of runs scored, I think it'll be okay.
By the way, for those two series, the Rockies and the Phillies and the Reds Pirates, we're talking about Saturday's games here.
Correct.
That would be impacted. I do want to go back and ask you something real quick, Dan.
Sure.
And that is there has been a new, and we're seeing this all across different facets of society. And I'm not going to go on a rant about it, but I will just say that everybody wants to protect themselves from risk.
Yes.
Well, listen, you can't. Okay, you cannot do that. We are all alive, and we have to take risks every day. But how this particular issue played out was last week. You had several Major League Baseball games that just said, "Okay, there's severe weather in the forecast. We're not going to play today." And then everybody ended up wondering where it was. Several ballparks were sunny, were bright. The timing of the rain was off. And we were sitting here questioning why they called it. It used to be, and in some cases it still is, that rain delays or postponements are called when it actually rained. I thought it was a head-scratching decision last week to just postpone games before the day even started.
Well, and this is where I always tell people, because we get asked as meteorologists, what would you do? And
right.
my sense, especially when it's scattered showers or storms in the forecast, always start the game. At least try to start the game. Get up closer to game time. Try to start on time, because again, the worst you can do is maybe get 2 or 3 innings in. Then there's a 45-minute delay, but then you come back out.
You also might get 5 in, and then you're good.
Correct. It all depends on the speed of the game. And right now we know baseball games are relatively short compared to last year, about 20 to 30 minutes shorter on average. So to me, I'm very much against the preemptive, let's call it, unless there's snow or something bizarre in the forecast that is a slam dunk. To me, if it's scattered showers or storms and maybe there's a severe thunderstorm watch, that's going to happen a lot this summer.
Yeah, I think baseball needs to slow down, and like everybody else, listen, everybody, there's going to be risks. And one of the risks is you might have to suffer through a rain delay. There may be a passing storm. Everybody can be safe. They're all watching the radar. But let's not postpone games and play double headers if we don't have to. I mean, that's my point. I thought it was really head-scratching last week what they did.
And the players, too. I mean, you could see it from their body language. Going back to the Phillies and the White Sox, that Game 2 lacked energy. It just did. Yeah. Game 1 was much more of a better game. It was, back and forth, good pitching. And really, by Game 2, I have to say, you shouldn't lose that easily in a second game when you had some momentum. But they faced a tough pitcher, got out ahead. The White Sox did, and the Phillies just couldn't catch them. I don't know if they just didn't have the energy or the depth, but it didn't look great in the second game.
Right. So I would try to avoid it as much as possible and not preemptively cancel games. So when we talk about Baltimore and New York, are we still thinking Saturday? You know, New York may be far enough east where a lot of that rain happens overnight. They may be spared of any issues, but what are your thoughts on those two games?
It's going to be close. I mean, I think so. New York is playing an afternoon game on Saturday in the Bronx. They like those 1 o'clock starts. Sometimes I get them on the radio. I listen to Susan Waldman and the great John Sterling. They're always entertaining. That's just baseball, Susan, as he likes to say. But anyway,
Yankees win.
The Yankees win. Giancarlo. But Sunday morning is still questionable in New York City. The timing is going to be critical because the tarp will probably be on the field. Can they get the game conditions right? Now I'm going to look up their start time. Yeah, 1:35. So it's another early start for them on Sunday. Sometimes they get flexed to Sunday Night Baseball. The Yankees are on that a lot, but not in this case.
Shocking.
Shocking.
But yeah, but I think they'll be okay on Sunday. And if they play Saturday, they're playing Saturday afternoon and not Saturday night.
Correct.
I think they will probably escape this, actually.
Yeah, I think they could. You know, again, timing's everything. I think they could be okay. So.
And the Orioles, quickly, what are we still thinking they might be in jeopardy Saturday?
Yeah,
or not?
So Saturday, Orioles, just double checking.
Because I
7 o'clock.
Oh,
yeah, that's
Saturday night.
Yeah, that's kind of basically a mid-state forecast here locally south of York. The rain, according to today's model runs, looks to be right overhead at that time.
Well, I'll tell you what. If I was a betting man, and as we know by this podcast, we are, I would wager that of those four sets of games that you have picked, Pittsburgh and the Orioles game probably have the best chance to be impacted. I would just say maybe stay away from the Orioles Saturday, because if I had to bet which one is probably going to be rained out or at least a long delay, and we know that plays with teams.
Yep.
Stay away from the Baltimore Orioles on Saturday, right?
I would, and then remember too the following day impact. If there is a doubleheader, good luck. Good luck trying to figure out what team shows up in game one versus game two.
No thanks. So you had asked me about the Phillies earlier. And, we continue to have this internal debate. Now, I just want everybody to know that every year that I've known you, and it's been a long time, we've known each other a lot longer than just since we have been doing this podcast. But you have been just Mr. Negative all the time with the Phillies and the Eagles and Penn State.
Especially Penn State.
And all of the teams that we like to talk about. Of course, we talk about everything on here, but you're Mr. Negative. And so all of a sudden this season, when I gripe and groan and I don't like what I'm seeing, you come skipping into work literally saying everything's okay. The building is burning and you're you're there with a garden hose and you're telling me not to worry. And I don't know how. I guess my two questions to you are this. I don't know why our roles all of a sudden personally have been reversed this year, but also, we've both looked at some of the numbers and the numbers are okay for the Phillies right now.
They are okay. 8-11 obviously is not where everyone wants to be in terms of the standings. And, the Braves coincidentally during this run are on a 7-game win streak, but the Phillies are 7-6 since their home opener, and the run differential in those games, they've outscored their opponents 69-58. So run differential is a big deal in baseball. Basically, it shows how dominant a team can be, and so that's actually a pretty good stat. And coming into yesterday, the Phillies were number one in batting average. Can you believe that? Shiner wants to chime in here.
Not with what I've seen.
It's pretty crazy, but if you look at it right now, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people on the Phillies batting higher than 300.
And that was always my dad's rule of thumb. If you have a good team, you should have a bunch of 300 hitters.
Yeah. And it's guys that are stepping up, too. You have Stott, you have Sosa, you have Baum, Turner, Schwarber's up at 313 now, where he started horrible.
Yep.
And has been
Is he
coming around
really?
late.
Is he over?
Marsh
is he
is
over
batting
300?
419.
I think you're talking about on base for Schwarber. I
On
think his
base
average
percentage,
is still
yes.
200-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was
On
gonna
base
say.
percentage is 313, but he was like low hundreds early.
Yes, yeah.
So it's just amazing that they're really hitting the ball off the cover right now.
And the shutdown bullpen right now. Basically, if you get good starting pitching with this team, that's the name of the game. You have 3 or 4 guys that are just shoving fastballs right now, 95 to 100. And yesterday, Alvarado was as good as I've seen him, painting the black at 100 miles per hour, freezing guys. I mean, they're just watching it go by. I mean, it's almost like blink and it's gone.
He's been amazing, and I sent you this stat last night. Phillies bullpen in the last 4 games, 16 strikeouts, 0 runs. So don't think I'm blind to this, right? I did send you that. It has been good. But two guys that we should mention just to highlight. You guys already touched on it, but as much as I do love the great Gene Segura, the Phillies made a wise move with Bryson Stott. Let's talk about Bryson Stott, right? That's how you know you've got a good front office, because they saw in Bryson Stott a guy that can make a difference, and boy, has he ever.
Well, and I think it's like any other sport. You give a guy that's kind of been waiting in the wings an opportunity, and now he's flying with it. You know, the moment wasn't too big for him. He obviously was a part of the winning last year as a role player in many ways, but I've been super impressed. Started with a 16-gamer?
17 game, and then he lost it in the 18th game, which was that doubleheader, and that is the only game he did not register a hit yet.
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
The other member of the Phillies daycare, Mr. Brandon Marsh, has been unreal.
Marsh madness.
I mean, he's hitting the cover off the ball for a little guy. He's shown some pop.
Well, I don't know. Is he little? His hair's big.
His hair is big, and for whatever reason, it's always greasy.
Marsh is a big dude. He's 6'4", 215.
Yeah, he's 6'4".
He's a big guy, man.
Maybe
the beard takes it away.
Down.
It makes him look shorter, I guess.
I thought so, Shiner. I thought he's pretty big, so I wouldn't call him a little
But his
guy,
batting average is big right now, too, at 368.
Yeah, I mean, he's been unreal. Everybody's tall to me, though. My perspective is a little bit off. I always wanted to be 6 foot. It never happened.
And then again, just quickly before we move on, Alvarado is just, giving him a shout out. Dan, I know you just did, but I just want to mention again, I like being able, and I'm still wearing my Phillies hat, by the way. I don't take it off. I mean, as frustrated as I can be, but I like being able to trust that closer. And, we weren't always able to do that, but now, my goodness, no matter what, you send him in there, you've got two, maybe 3 good innings. Usually, I guess 2, but he can go in there and really shut things down, and that's got to make the team feel confident.
He's what you call a stopper. I mean, if he throws strikes, as he says, strike 1, strike 2, good luck.
You're
all at
100
plus half the time.
All 100 plus. And again, locating, that's the hard part. That's where
indeed.
The reason why he was traded from the Tampa Bay Rays was because he couldn't control it. Now he's kind of honed in that control over the last calendar year.
And it shows. All right, a couple of other topics to get to before we bring on a guest today. And those of you college football fans will want to hear this guest. That is coming up in just a bit. We do want to mention, though, the Eagles signing Jalen Hurts. They got their man, his contract, the biggest ever. So let's break down the numbers, guys.
Yeah, let's bring in our Adam Schefter here, a.k.a. Dave Shiner.
Yeah, so when you first see it, the numbers seem crazy, okay? It's a 5-year deal, $255 million. Now, some of these numbers might vary depending on what site you're looking at, how they're accounting for the cap. But he got a $23 million and some change signing bonus. At signing, 116 was guaranteed just at signing. Okay,
that's similar to Dan's contract.
Yeah, I mean,
similar. Yeah,
we have the same agent.
But all said and done, it's 179.304 million guaranteed in the contract. There's a no trade clause, and he is now the highest paid quarterback at an average of $51 million a year.
And he's a Philadelphia Eagle.
He's a Philadelphia Eagle. But this is the crazy part. Howie doing Howie things, okay? He's still on his rookie contract right now. So his cap hit is minimalized through 26. Okay, so in 2023, the cap hit is between 4 and 6.5, depending on what you're looking
That's
at
nothing.
between the signing bonus and whatnot. 24, 13.6, 25, 21.7, and 26, 31.7. Now, to put that in perspective, next year, Mahomes' cap hit 39.
Ooh.
Ryan Tannehill 36.
Ooh.
Lamar Jackson, if he signs,
Ryan
32.
Tannehill makes that kind of money.
That's what his cap hit is.
Oh, Lord.
Okay. Aaron Rodgers.
Tannehill. Wait. Whoa. Go back. Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson with the franchise tag is 32. Obviously, he hasn't signed anything yet.
Yeah. Hold up yet, though. What's the latest with him? These numbers are great.
Nothing.
I have to ask.
Nothing.
Because he's floating out there, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is the separator. I mean, Howie Roseman got this done.
Yeah.
And it's easier said than done.
Well, it's amazing what you can do with an agent.
Yeah.
And I think that's Lamar's big problem right now.
Yeah.
You know? But
it's an interesting one. Okay, so sorry,
Yeah.
but I had to
that's
ask because again,
very important.
It's the comp.
we're waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we're
it's
waiting.
the comp.
Yeah.
All right, Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers still floating, but his cap hit would be 31 million. Dak Prescott is 26.
Wow.
Russell Wilson is 22, and Danny Dimes 21. So you have 7 quarterbacks that their cap hit is going to be greater than Jalen Hurts next year, and he doesn't even touch it until 2026. Now, mind you, look at all the other people that are signed through 2027 right now. I mean, this is a team-friendly deal. He's getting his money somehow, and it still gives you room to renegotiate
And the
in that
cap
last
goes up
year.
every year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the natural
And just
progression
imagine
of the NFL.
what these other guys are going to get. Burrow, Herbert, Jackson. I mean, he got it done in the right time so that it doesn't get ballooned even more to what these guys are going to want after they see this
This
contract.
is the highest.
It's amazing.
This is the highest AAV, I believe, in NFL history, but that'll be surpassed here very quickly.
Oh, it's always the highest until the next guy. Right? That's how it goes.
I want to ask this. First of all, incredible stuff there, Shiner.
Doing my accounting on the side.
Well, listen, it's a team-friendly deal. So you emphasize that. Just for everybody listening out there, why?
Why is it a team-friendly deal? The way Howie's able to give the signing bonus and stretch out these contracts and move money around, it means they can still sign other players for the next 4 to 5 years.
Devontae Smith,
You're not
A.J.
just
Brown.
throwing all your money into an Aaron Rodgers situation and now they have nothing. They can still supplement through the draft. They can still go big free agents. But that hit on the cap, which is going up every year, is so minimal compared to some of these other big-name quarterbacks.
You got to balance the books, right? I mean, you can only have so many good superstar-type talent, but he's able to massage this in effect that no one else really has been able to do. Tom Brady was actually pretty good at this.
Yeah.
He would take a lower cap hit so that he would, help the team get supporting cast around him. But that's really the only. It's the only recent case I can think of where that's happened.
It's very similar to Mahomes' structure, but his was a 10-year deal. So that's why his cap hit is so huge right now, and it's only going to balloon up. With it being a 5-year deal, you still have options to relook at it 5 years from now when your cap hit is still low and give these signing bonuses so you still have money available to bring in good talent. And that's the big thing.
You might get 2 years into this, and Howie may restructure this again. He just did it with Jordan Mailata. He's done it with other stars. And here's the big thing that everyone has to remember. Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles, stepped up to give him that cash offer up front. So that bonus is coming from the Eagles. It may not, hit the cap the way a salary would per year, but that bonus is huge for NFL standards. And that's the owner saying, you're my guy. This is my team. We're going to win a Super Bowl. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, okay, two quick questions to close this out, though. This is a simple one because I know the answer, but it's worth asking. As fans, are you guys happy with this?
Shiner?
Yeah, and I think the big thing people are hanging on is, hey, we paid Carson Wentz maybe a little too early. The only difference between this and Carson Wentz is, one, you have a quarterback who has progressively gotten better every year, just came off of a Super Bowl appearance, and didn't have a concussion, a broken back, and an ACL tear before they gave him the contract.
Exactly.
So I am ecstatic with it, the fact of the team-friendly aspect of it, and I really do think Jalen is the guy.
I'm happy with it from the sole fact this is the cost of doing business. I mean, you see what the Ravens are putzing around. It's become a media nightmare. The Eagles just went out, made a move, made a bold, strong move for the franchise. There's no messing around here, and I like that.
There's no games.
Right.
No pun intended, but there's no games. And last question on this topic for you guys: he's going to have to perform now, right?
Yes.
Well, you're banking on that.
Literally. I mean, that comes with the territory. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the skeptics are saying, hey, we have 1 year of this, okay, of this great run. Similar to what happened to Carson in 17. He had this great MVP year. He gets hurt. The difference is, I think they're paying Jalen the guy as much as they are the athlete.
Yes.
This guy has a great head on his shoulders. He says the right things. He's a team leader. I mean, I don't mind if you're paying him rather than someone like Deshaun Jackson, who, you know.
Well, right. Enough.
Or not Deshaun Jackson.
When you watch
Deshaun Watson is what I meant.
Oh,
Sorry.
yes.
Yeah.
But
correct. Yes.
Slip of the tongue. I love my D-Jack.
But when you watch Jalen Hurts, you could see it. I mean, that's the other thing. He's just
He
better.
is him.
Got to pay the rent. Rent is due.
Got to pay. Yeah, it is. Great stuff, Shiner. Good takeaways there.
No
All
problem.
right, college football time now. We are going to be talking about spring games here very briefly, and then we're going to get to our guest who is talking about spring football with us down in Aggie land, which is always exciting. Very quickly, Dan, let's talk about Penn State spring game. Reports coming out of the blue and white it was okay. It was good to see the team scrimmage again. Not really sure there was any big takeaways or big highlights. I've heard some of the experts on many podcasts that we also listen to and partake in that said, Aller looked good. Nothing flashy. These teams don't really show a lot during the spring. That's not the point of it. But everybody likes where Penn State is, what Penn State has coming back, the weakness being the wide receiving core, if there is one. But I think Aller did what he had to do. You don't want to see somebody that's sluggish or that maybe, looks around too much or doesn't really seem to know the offense. He seemed to check all those boxes, even if there wasn't any, pro highlight.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just another step in the progression, right? I mean, we truly have just not seen a lot of Drew, even though he's this highly touted prospect. The offensive line has to gel with him. He's now the signal caller up front. The wide receivers have to gel with him, the tight ends, the running backs, and that just, to me, that all takes time. There's probably more of a vanilla offense than you'll see in the regular season. You don't want to get too much on tape for other teams, but I do think one thing I liked from the highlights, I didn't get the chance to see the game, but the way he was going through his reads, he wasn't getting impatient, he wasn't getting jumpy, and his throws were mainly on time from what I could see. He was making the right reads and getting the ball out on time, giving the wide receivers room and space when he could. I just think much of what I thought about last year, they're just missing that huge playmaker on the wide receiving end. And maybe it's Amari Evans. He had a great game, but we just don't know enough yet.
Yeah, we need to see some of the games. Biggest competitors in the Big Ten. Not really hearing much about Michigan right now, but what we can tell you about Ohio State is they have some question marks. And I'm telling you, I'm hearing from a lot of the folks that were there and things that we read that Ohio State's got some quarterback questions. They've got some line questions. Now, the opposite is true for them. They have the best wide receivers in the country, but are they going to be able to put it all together? Running back depth isn't necessarily there. That's something that Penn State is slightly better at. Now, once again, it's April, and you're going to have to convince me that Penn State can beat these teams. But on paper, Penn State has it together. Ohio State, I will never say that they're struggling, but they have a lot of question marks that they typically don't have.
Well, and let's be fair, too. It's hard to say that you have a quarterback set in stone after losing someone as strong as C.J. Stroud. I mean, that's a generational talent there potentially for Ohio State. So, yes, I think there is going to be a transition period here. Will they come out strong, though, in the first couple games of the season and erase that right away, erase that doubt? I think it's always a possibility. I mean, they recruit as well as anybody. They recruit as well as some of these SEC schools, and Ryan Day is still there. Now, you've been very on top of this. The offensive coordinator story might be very interesting for them.
Refresh my memory here. Where you're going with this?
Isn't this the investigation that's ongoing with the offensive coordinator for Ohio State?
I am drawing a blank. I'm sorry. Are you talking about the Brian Hartline?
Yes, yeah, suspected DUI and
Well, it was on his property, though. He was driving an ATV. He's okay. I don't. I ultimately don't think anything is going to come up. I mean, he was celebrating after the spring game, and I apologize. I apologize because in my mind, Brian Hartline is the wide receivers coach. He is the OC now, so
Yes.
that's what threw me. I apologize.
Yeah, but my point is that not all is well there in Columbus.
Yeah, that is to that point, and I have been texting you updates about this as I clear the fog from my brain. But he is their OC, so it's hard to keep all of this straight. But
I mean, Ryan Day's offense, he's the OC, whatever you want to say, but
but he was
I think
just promoted, and I think to your point, that's something you don't often see coming out of Ohio State,
and it's not a great look. It's just, I mean, if this were to happen to Mike Yursich on the Penn State side, I think we'd all be like, oh boy, what's going to happen?
Right. I mean, it definitely raised my eyebrows, and that is why I was texting you stuff. And ultimately, guy's a couple of drinks, gets in an ATV accident on his property. Is it a big deal? Probably not. Is it a good look? Probably not. Let's see how all of this plays out, just in terms of, again, with their personnel. Maybe he knows. Maybe Ryan Day knows. They have a lot of questions that they normally don't have.
Let me just say this. What's not a good look for the program is this is coming on the heels of a pretty major incident in Georgia with players drinking and driving. And, you don't want to take these things lightly. Obviously, it's putting people in danger. But it just speaks, unfortunately, to character and decision-making. And will Ryan Day have to make an example of this? It's always a question.
Yeah, I think it's probably a dead story, but let's see what happens the rest of the summer. You don't want to subscribe too much. We all have social drinks. We all do things like that. Again, this was at his house, but it wasn't something where, now the pressure is greater on him too. He's not just the wide receiver guy. He is the OC.
And getting paid a lot of money, I'm assuming.
Correct. Yeah, well, absolutely. So let's go down south quickly. A couple of more teams. I do want to mention Alabama here because,
you got any Saban nuggets?
Well, I do, and we just talked about the we just talked about the Jalen Hurts contract. Just remember, Nick Saban benched him in the
which is hard to believe.
Game.
But when you have Jalen and Tua, I mean, what a quarterback room. Looking back on that, wow.
Well, I'm glad you said that, and this is unscripted, folks. Believe it or not, but that leads me right into the problem. The problem with Alabama. I am hearing that their quarterback room is a mess right now. They've got Jalen Milroe, and then they've got I think it's Tyson, and right now they are probably shopping in the portal, from what I'm hearing, for a quarterback. And
Nick Saban actively shopping in the portal.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to fathom that. Now we'll see if anybody lands there or if they go with one of the two they have, but reports coming out of Tuscaloosa suggest that Saban is looking. And remember, he had to bring in a new OC.
Bill O'Brien got run out of town.
Yeah, that didn't go smoothly either, because many fans are asking if Tommy Rees can handle this. So I think Bama has a lot of questions. And Nick Saban was just, I think he was on the Next Round, which is a pretty big podcast radio deal, YouTube, out of Alabama. And he basically suggested that, without saying their name, that they want it back from Georgia. And he knows that Georgia is on top of college football right now.
But you know what? In a sick way, he probably enjoys this. He probably enjoys saying, hey, guys, we're no longer on top. Wake up.
Well, I think so, too. And Kirby Smart's going to have the other problem. Now, their quarterback situation is better, although, again, he's got several 5-stars to try to keep happy. And I've heard that Carson Beck is doing really good things. But, again, it's hard to tell from a spring game. But Kirby is going to have the opposite problem this year of keeping his team motivated and making them have that chip on their shoulder after winning back-to-back years. Nobody's ever three-peated. If you look at the schedule, and we did this on a podcast several weeks ago, Georgia has a clear-cut path to do it again. Having said that, they ran into good competition in the playoff last year and almost got knocked off by Ohio State. So
On any given Saturday, you can get beat if you're not paying attention.
on any given Saturday, it can happen to anybody. So Georgia probably has things a little more figured out than Bama, but I really want to keep an eye on the Alabama quarterback situation. So that's something we're going to have to watch. Maybe we could try to get somebody on from Tuscaloosa land.
Ooh, I would love that.
And
maybe someone from the, what's it called, the Red Elephant Club?
Yeah, they do have that. I'd like to get to, maybe we can try to get a writer on from down there, or even could we see it? Is Paul Feinbaum available?
Is he out there? Is he listening?
I doubt he's listening, but I know he's out there. He's a busy man though. But I would like some updates from boots on the ground down there. But right now, reports are not great in that quarterback room trying to sort things out. And basically that's because Saban knows his competition is going to be tough week in and week out. We go over to, and this is going to set up our next guest, we go over to Texas, and we're talking about Texas A&M, who clearly was down last year. We've talked about Jimbo Fisher and his frustrations. Jimbo looked pretty relaxed, though, after their spring game and spring scrimmages. He was joking with the media the other day. We touch on that in this interview. One of the things that Texas A&M has is talent, and they probably have finally figured out their quarterback situation with Wegman. They've got elite talent on their lines. They played Alabama tough last year. So Saban knows he needs to get a quarterback that can win him some games. Do you think that A&M can bounce back this year? And, of course, they made a change at the OC position.
Well, we'll get to the change of the OC position momentarily, but I do think Texas A&M can make noise simply because of the recruiting factor, of the talent they brought in. Now, can they put it all together? That remains the question. Was this past year, a sign that there's a negative cloud over the program and this really could be Jimbo's swan song? There's that possibility too. I think the odds are stacked that they will make it out alive, and I think they will have a pretty good season here. Now, whether or not it'll satisfy the fan base, that's always the question.
Well, it is, but we get into all of this, and it's time to bring in our guest here. We had a chance to talk with Sam Kahn Jr., who is a writer for The Athletic, and he covers all things Texas. I think this gentleman goes from one side of the state to the next, Dan, covering all kinds of FBS programs. And he was kind enough to talk to us about what we feel is really the most fascinating situation going into this new season, right?
Yep, I'm going to roll this interview, so stand by.
Well, our guest today comes to us from The Athletic. He's a senior writer there covering college football and recruiting primarily in the great state of Texas, and he knows the area well as he is a graduate from the University of Houston. He is Sam Kahn Jr. We're excited to talk with him today. Fresh off an appearance on the Feinbaum Show. I heard you on there, Sam, a little while ago. We're going to talk primarily Texas A&M football, Sam. Thanks so much for coming on. And we want to start with Jimbo Fisher, of course, before we get into what we feel is going to be the most fascinating college football story of next season. Let's go back to last year a bit. The wheels fell off. The walls came crumbling down. Pick your metaphor, if you will, for Jimbo. After flirting with the playoff in 2020 and signing pretty highly rated recruiting classes the last several years, what happened last season? Why do you think things fell apart so grandly?
I think it was a combination of factors. One, you had a team that turned out to be really, really young. And you say, well, he recruited a bunch of top 10 recruiting classes the last few years. Why is that? They have had a lot of attrition in those classes. A lot of guys, I went and added this up. I think in the first 3 recruiting classes that he signed at Texas A&M, more than half of them did not finish their careers at Texas A&M, whether they transferred or had medical exemptions or what have you. There was a lot of attrition out of those first few classes. So by the time you got to 2022, you had a lot of holes in terms of depth. And so that 2022 signing class that ranked number 1 in the country, a lot of those guys had to play because they got injured. There was a lot of injuries. There were some holes in depth from other misses in past recruiting classes. And then I think overall you had a coach and a coaching staff that I don't think did a great job as they put that roster together of finding good fits. And when I say that, I mean fits for what they do, fits for what Jimbo Fisher wants to do. I do think they got a little infatuated with the idea of having the number 1 recruiting class and just going to grab the best players regardless of what the circumstances may be. And I don't know that that's always the best way to build a roster. You take that, and then you take the third thing that I think was really key was offensively, they struggled mightily. And I think a lot of that falls back on Jimbo Fisher, who has been the offensive coordinator and play caller as a head coach for his entire head coaching career. He's done that at a high level in the past, but it seems to me that it's not being done at a high level anymore. And managing that part of the operation, along with the big picture demands that come with coaching college football in 2022, 2023, it's a little bit more difficult to be the primary offensive game planner, the primary offensive play caller, and still be the CEO of a program and do all of those things at a high level. It's almost like trying to be an NFL GM and the head coach. Not very many people can do it, and it takes a special person to do it. And I think he struggled with that balance quite a bit last season.
Now, despite some of the pitfalls of last season, there were some signs of hope. So let's talk about the positive. The team almost knocked off Alabama. They seem to play them tough every year under Jimbo. And they did get a significant win over perhaps one of the rising SEC teams in LSU. So maybe things aren't that far off track. But ignoring that big change that was made, which we'll get to in a second, did some of these flashes reveal that maybe it's not all broken? Maybe Jimbo still does have it in the tank?
I think what it showed is that this team still has the talent. And we talked about the recruiting classes, and I talked about the attrition. But when you look at the roster, especially your starting 22, they have a lot of really good players. And they have enough talent to be a factor in the SEC West. The question, I think, to me is, do they have the depth to be a big factor in the SEC West? But when you look at their freshman quarterback, who will be a sophomore this year, Connor Wegman, Evan Stewart, the 5-star receiver who played a lot as a freshman last year. They brought in a 5-star running back, Ruben Owens. We know they have recruited extremely well on the defensive line the last few years. And last year was a little bit tough because a lot of those recruits played as freshmen because their entire 2021 defensive line graduated or went on to the NFL draft. So that was a little bit of a tough transition, but they've got so much depth on the offensive and defensive lines that if they can keep those guys together and stay healthy, I still think they have some potential. But all those other parts of the equation that we just mentioned earlier, I think those all have to come together for that to sustain, because we're looking at a team right now that, as we sit here on April 19th, they've lost 27 scholarship guys to the transfer portal since last season. So that they've got to find a balance between, hey, high-level young talent, and hey, let's have some veterans here that can provide some leadership and make sure we have some depth too. But yeah, not all is lost at Texas A&M because they did the hardest part, which is get the talent on the roster.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But let's get to the 300-pound motorcycle in the room, if we can, Sam. During the offseason, Bobby Petrino rides into town to take over the offense. Jimbo's been running his own offense since really he became a coach, essentially. Loves doing it, loves working with the QBs. However, it was clear that something needed to change in order to make this team more competitive because, as you just said, they have the talent. So Jimbo brings in Bobby Petrino, who, despite some questionable off-field issues, has his own reputation as a very innovative, pretty successful offensive guru. So it seems like a match made in heaven, or is it? Was this Jimbo's choice, or was there some outside pressure here to get this fixed?
Yeah, I think if it was just left to Jimbo and only Jimbo, and he had his druthers, I think he'd still be calling the offense, and I think he'd still be running everything because that's what he loves to do. He loves to call plays. He loves the offensive game plan. He loves the intricacies and the chess match that comes with being a football coach. But I think there certainly was some pressure from the administration. I think also he recognized it. I don't think he's dumb. I think he realized something was wrong last year. And if you constantly are calling plays and they're not getting executed, something's getting lost in translation. And so you had to go find somebody who can help you get to that. Bobby Petrino, like you said, for all of the stuff in his past, one thing we do know he knows is he knows how to coach offensive football. And he's had some really successful offenses at Arkansas. He had some successful offenses at Louisville. Obviously, he's been at the NFL level. So he's got a pretty deep resume. And I think the fact that he's been a head coach, going head-to-head with Jimbo, they were together in the ACC. I think that he carries a level of respect that Jimbo will have for him. It's not a young up-and-comer that Jimbo's just going to kind of run over. Bobby's, he doesn't need to do this. Bobby's in his 60s. Certainly he wants to probably be a head coach again, but I don't think he's going to really take any gruff from Jimbo. And so having that kind of personality in the room, I think it could cause fireworks at times because I think they're both very strong personalities. But I think Jimbo needed somebody like that to be able to basically tell him no sometimes is that and that he's not always right necessarily, because you're not always going to be 100% right. And so when you take Petrino's offensive acumen and you take the talent that they have on that roster on offense, you look at it and there's a lot of potential there. But I also think with the two personalities, depending on how they mesh, and so far it seems like it's been okay, but we'll see when games are actually happening in the fall. It could also be a beautiful disaster.
And that's what Brett and I are kind of here for, to see that unfold. I mean, it's always interesting bringing a former head coach onto a staff where the head coach might be in some peril. And speaking of which, maybe Jimbo is getting a little bit uncomfortable, because at his recent spring press conference, it caught our eye simply because he looked very uncomfortable up there on the podium. You wrote about it. He was antsy. He was irritated, swatting away reporters' questions like Texas mosquitoes. I mean, how uncomfortable was it watching a national championship winning coach be that uneasy? And this wasn't after a loss. This is spring ball. What's going on here?
Yeah, it was so odd. I remember thinking after that finished, I'm like, did that really just happen? Like, why was he like that? Because the first press conference of spring football is a layup. It is the time to spout positivity and give your fans a reason to be excited about the upcoming season, because you haven't lost a football game yet. You've got your recruiting class in. Nothing has gone wrong ostensibly at that point. But I think it goes back to what we were mentioning earlier, and what I discussed earlier was, I think Jimbo has a hard time letting go. Jimbo likes to control things, and giving up control to the thing that I think he loves the most, which is offensive game planning, is really hard to reckon with. And I think also I saw it throughout last season when they were struggling through their 5-7 season, the times he got defensive after losses, the criticism of their struggles, I think he took personally, and it's a shot to his ego. And he takes pride. He won a national championship calling offensive plays and directing that offense with Jameis Winston in Florida State. And to think that 10 years later, people are questioning that very skill that helped him win at the highest level in this sport, I'm sure it's very humbling for him, and I'm sure it's very difficult to deal with. And I think that's what that was. It was a manifestation of, I'm tired of people coming at me and asking me questions about my offense and my acumen and what I'm able to do, when I probably know more football than any of you have ever dreamed of. And he's probably right about that. He does. He's been coaching for 40 years. He certainly knows more football than I do. But it doesn't take a football coach to realize that something was wrong last year and that something needed to change. And the more we dug, the more it became clear that managing those two things, the big picture program management and the offense, just became a little bit too much. And like I said, I think it's too much for most coaches. But that press conference to me was a sign that even though he made the change, it isn't what he wanted to do, and it's not something that he was necessarily welcoming with open arms and most comfortable with. And that's what makes this whole experiment the rest of the year fascinating, because what happens 3 games or 4 games into the season, if they're down 14-0 at Auburn and they have a few 3-and-outs, what's going to happen at that point? And I don't think any of us know the answer to that question until we get there.
No, and that was actually going to be my follow-up, because, again, Jimbo, as uncomfortable as he was, I don't think that was a press conference where anybody was questioning him. That was just an introduction to Bobby Petrino and some of the changes that were going to be made. So it does feel like there's a lot of material to mine here from this opening presser that he had. Jimbo had a tough time spitting out the fact that Bobby Petrino is going to be calling the plays. He's going to be the guy. He did say it eventually. He got there. But it was certainly like pulling teeth. So, I mean, like you said, we don't really know, but who is calling plays? And if we get into a situation like you just suggested, can this work? I mean, can this really work?
It can work as long as Jimbo allows it to work, I think, because ultimately the buck stops with him. I don't believe for a second that Bobby Petrino would have taken this job without the assurances that he's going to call the offense, because he had already taken another offensive coordinator job at UNLV with Barry Odom over there. Mm-hmm. And he was not going to leave for anything less than, this is going to be my offense. We'll work together and we'll discuss ideas and we'll figure out what's best for this team. But Bobby Petrino wrote a 400-page book on his offense. I actually got it recently, started reading it to kind of understand and get to learn what we're going to see this year. So that's not a guy who's going to come in and just get pushed over. So that's what's going to be fascinating is if they struggle, what's going to happen. Now, it could work out beautifully. It could work out really well because when you look at Wegman, Stewart, Owens, they bring back all 5 starters in the offensive line. They have no shortage of talent to work with. So when I look at the teams that he had at Louisville, and like he had Lamar Jackson, who obviously is one of the best quarterbacks in college football history, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But it's not like Lamar Jackson had the amount of talent around him that A&M does around Wegman. So when I think of that and I think of Bobby's offensive acumen, then I think there's real potential there for them to be a legitimate top 25, top 30 offense nationally. That's the talent level they have. The question is how do him and Jimbo get along, and does that work? And again, like I said, if they struggle, what happens at that point? So that's an unanswerable question for me. It's an unanswerable question, I think, for people in the building, for people A&M administration. I think is curious to see what's going to happen if you hit those hard times with the offense.
So one more time, going back to this press conference, Jimbo kept mentioning fundamentals. Why is that the case? Why was he mentioning that? And was that really the issue last year? Is it a little bit strange? He keeps going back to that. I know in other press conferences he'll say we need to be better in all 3 phases: offense, defense, special teams. It's almost like he went to the Nick Saban school of handling press conferences. Is this just all a distraction technique?
I think it was, honestly, believe it or not, I just don't think he was really ready for that. And I don't know why, because we hadn't talked to him in 4 months. And you had to know that those questions were coming. And I just felt he could have been better prepared for that whole situation. And I think that was his way of saying who we hire as offensive coordinator is irrelevant, because if we don't do the fundamentals right, then it's not going to work. And to some degree, that is true. But honestly, I think that's more of Jimbo's ego just getting in the way. I think that's more him, again, being offended that he had to take this step, again, as somebody who has won at the highest level. And I get that that's hard to deal with, but I sure think he probably should have worked that out before he got in front of a mic in front of all of us. And that's what makes this whole thing fascinating to me.
Now, just a quick follow-up to the presser again, and then we're going to move on to some other topics, Sam. But he did have a press conference this week in the last couple of days. He was more jovial. He was joking around with the media. He threw out some dadgummits, and he just seemed more like the old Jimbo. This week went a little better for him, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and I think we're at the end of spring football now. You get through 15 practices. You get a better feel for your team. I'm sure now he's got a better feel for this new staff. Obviously Petrino, they had a new running backs coach as well. Getting a little bit more acclimated, I think you probably start to get a little bit of a comfort level. And I think Jimbo has said this in the past, is that once you get through 15 practices, you wish you had 15 more, because you're just starting to master and get a hang of things. So I'm sure there's probably some signs of what they saw in the last couple of weeks of practice that, okay, we're starting to get this. We're starting to figure this out. We're starting to find a rhythm. And again, when you look at what they have from a talent standpoint, there's a lot to like there. So it's just a matter of putting it all together. So that attitude from Jimbo, he has had a lot of that over the years, and he does like to joke around and poke fun from time to time. It's when things go wrong is where he gets a little tight, a little tense, and a little defensive. So that's kind of he's not. It's funny because coaches always tell players, be a thermostat, not a thermometer. But I feel like sometimes Jimbo is a thermometer, and his mood fluctuates based on whether they win or lose, even though he preaches, be steady and even keeled at all times.
So you've mentioned a lot about the talent, and we appreciate the breakdown so far you've given us. But now looking ahead, looking at recruiting, oftentimes when you have a season like last year, the recruiting begins to take a hit. So where do things stand for A&M going into the season? Has it fallen at all? And do you like who they're bringing in talent-wise?
Yeah, the 2023 class wasn't ranked as high as the 2022 class. I believe they finished 15th in the recruiting rankings per 247. So, and it was a smaller class. They signed 30 in that 2022 class, but in the 2023 class, they only signed 19. But I do think they still brought in some high-level talent. I mentioned Reuben Owens, the 5-star running back. They brought in David Hicks, who was a 5-star defensive lineman, one of the best defensive lineman prospects in the country. Chase Pasantis from New Jersey, He's an offensive tackle who enrolled early, who really has shined in the spring football, and he looks like he's going to compete for some playing time. Even though they bring back all 5 starters, he looks like he's going to compete for some playing time early. So they definitely are still bringing in high-level guys. It's just a matter of, I think if you could have done it over again, you probably would have tried to bring in more. Or what I think you'll see, and they're starting to see it now, is they're going to attack the transfer portal a little bit more. And I think when we talked at the top about youth and inexperience, they need to age that roster a little bit and supplement that depth with some more veteran players. And they just pulled a cornerback from Boston College yesterday. They pulled a fullback from Rice the other day. So they're starting to sprinkle in more experienced guys that I think he needs to fill depth, because from a scholarship standpoint, they're a little bit down on numbers. They need to do some work in the portal to get back to 85 or close to it. But overall, I think the recruiting is still good. To me, it's not the recruiting. To me, it's the retention and development. That's going to be the key. I think their eye for talent is actually pretty solid. It's just a matter of being able to keep guys on the roster and develop them so that you're not having to sign 30-member recruiting classes or go hammer the portal every other year to fill out your roster.
Well, and this Jimbo Petrino dynamic is going to be one of the most fascinating things in the sport. I just think going into this season to watch, we're certainly going to keep an eye on it. Just a few more questions, Sam, before we let you go. Just quickly shifting to Texas, you cover them too. This is a team that's coming into the SEC next season, reuniting with A&M. I think I saw you report that Quinn Ewers gets the start. Arch Manning, though, is there taking some snaps in spring ball. Just a quick thought on Texas and how Sark has things going there in the offseason.
They've done a really good job of building this roster since he got there. I remember going to a practice of theirs the very first fall. Steve Sarkisian was there a couple of weeks before the 2021 season started, and we were just talking about A&M and how much talent they've accumulated. I remember going over to Texas and thinking to myself, this team doesn't look like the Texas A&M team, especially from a line of scrimmage standpoint. And fast forward to here we are in spring 2023, and now that roster starting to look that way. It's starting to look like a team that you would expect to look in the SEC. They still, I think, have a little bit of ways to cover, but for the most part, the line talent, the depth, the skill talent on the outside is really, really high quality. And I think Sarkisian he's another one who does call his offensive plays, but I think he has done a good job of balancing those demands with managing the roster, because I think Texas has done a fantastic job of doing that. He's got a really good personnel staff and scouting staff that he trusts, and they do a good job of finding really good impact players in the portal and getting really good high school talent on the roster. I think when I look at Texas right now and I look at the Big 12, which to me seems wide open, I don't see any reason why Texas should not be in the Big 12 championship game in December. Wow. I think that's the kind of talent they have. And to me, if you don't make it there, if you don't win 10 games and get to the Big 12 title game, it's a disappointment to me if you're Texas. And I know we've had a lot of years in the past 10 or 12 years that people have ranked Texas in the top 25 and said this is the year and that's the year. I've seen a lot of that. But this year, to me, it feels like this should be the year for them, because they finally are there and the conference is wide open. And if you don't do it this year, you're going to the SEC in 2024. It's going to be a lot more difficult to win the conference there than it is here. So I think right now everything is trending in the right direction for Texas.
Well, and if they're on the rise, Texas A&M is on the rise. Let's talk rivals here. I mean, will SEC prioritize scheduling for this matchup, Texas and Texas A&M? And, do you see the game happening maybe Thanksgiving weekend? I mean, do we bring back what was such a beautiful thing of college football?
I sure hope so. I've missed that game, growing up here in Texas, and that was what you did on Thanksgiving. You watched the NFL games, and then either that night or on Black Friday, depending on what day it fell, you watched Texas and Texas A&M. And it didn't matter if you had any connection to either school or if you had a rooting interest in either school. It was just what you did, and it was fun to watch because the intensity of that rivalry, the hatred on both sides, it was a lot of fun to watch. And all I've had to endure the last decade is message boards and Twitter battles between fans about recruiting,
right?
And who doesn't need the other. And that drives me nuts, because rivalries are the fabric of college football, and it's what we love about it. So I sure hope we get there. A lot of it will depend on where the SEC lands in its schedule format. If they go to the 3 fixed opponents and 6 rotation and 9 conference games, then we'll see Texas and Texas A&M in 2024 for sure. If they go to one fixed opponent and 7 rotating opponents with 8 conference games, then there is a possibility that we may not see the game till 2025 because Texas A&M's permanent opponent will probably be LSU. Texas's will be Oklahoma. So the trend seems to be, and the vibe seems to be, that by the end of May, the SEC will land on the 9-game schedule with a 3-6 rotation, and so we won't have to worry about that. Whether it ends up being on Thanksgiving, that still has to be worked out because there are lots of other SEC rivalries that weekend, so they're going to have to move around a little bit of the scheduling to make it all work. But I sure hope, and I would be surprised if sometime in mid to late November in 2024 we weren't seeing these two teams play again.
Yeah, it's exciting. We're in Big Ten country, but we love that rivalry, and it's a shame that it hasn't been played recently. So given the ups and downs of Texas and the uncertainty, at least going into this season with this new grand experiment in A&M, I'd just like to get your thought. Which program is better positioned going into this SEC? I know Texas has one more year in the Big 12, as you mentioned, probably contending for a Big 12 title, but who do you think is better positioned, Texas or Texas A&M, for 24 when they are both together in the SEC?
I think I have to lean Texas, even though I think A&M's talent level is still where it needs to be. Just watching everything I've seen over there in the last 12 to 15 months, I just don't know if I'm a buyer that the Jimbo Fisher thing is going to work out long term. And Steve Sarkisian's methodical method of building this team, building this roster, I love the moves he's made, and I love how well that team is put together. Now, it's going to be a smack in the face. It's going to be a learning curve in 2024 going from a Big 12 schedule to an SEC schedule. That's just a fact of the matter.
Yeah.
But the way they're building, I like what I see. And you saw the way they played Alabama last year. They played Alabama close. If Quinn Ewers doesn't get hurt, they might have won that game. Mm-hmm. And I now doing that every week is another issue. But the way they're building it and the fact that he's got some experience in the SEC, I would give Texas the slight edge at this point, just because I think their program trajectory is a little bit better and further along right now than A&M. A&M was there a couple of years ago when they made that flirtation with the playoff, but to me, they've taken 2 steps back, and they're going to have to kind of climb out of that hole.
Very interesting, and I kind of side with you on that, I believe. So one last question from me. You're talking to 2 meteorologists here, but we love college football. But we also know, based on the theme of this podcast, that weather has an impact on college football games, baseball, NFL, whatever have you. We want to know from you, what Texas weather do you hate? Is it the heat? Is it the storms? Dust storms? Do you get those where you are? I mean, tell us. We're not used to those sorts of things here in central Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I think it's the unbearing heat when we're in the middle of July or August. We get humidity here, and I've born and raised here, so I've lived most of my life here, and I'm used to it. It doesn't mean that I like it. The floods are certainly not ideal, and those are, I think, a little bit more problematic. But the heat in the middle of the summer is difficult, and especially now because I have kids and we have a dog, and there's just a large block of time from about noon till about 6 where it's just not wise to be outside, and that's just it's not fun to be inside in the summer. So that part has become, I think, a little bit difficult to me. When it rains here, they say it rains, it pours, and it really does in Houston. We don't get the dust storms. That's more West Texas, but we do get it. And then I will tell you this is a me personal thing. Yeah. I love spring, but pollen season down here is awful. And so I have the seasonal allergies, and I'm sneezing up a storm and waking up with red eyes and everything. And that part is probably even harder to deal with in the heat, but the heat is by far the hardest thing for me to deal with in July, because let me tell you, a couple of kids and a dog cooped up in a house in the middle of the summer for, 5-6 hours with school's out. Not always a great situation. So got to get them outside to get their energy, and got to get them to the pool and stuff like that. So that's probably for me the most difficult to deal with.
Yeah, it can't be any fun for the practice sessions down there, the early fall practice sessions either. But
no kidding.
The pollen is not great here either.
No, and we've become more humid the last few years too. And actually, it's been a hot start, but nothing what you guys deal with. And I know the thunderstorms are different down there too. I mean, we get some run-of-the-mill thunderstorms, but I just know it's a whole different animal.
And we're not exactly built well to handle that either, because we have concrete everywhere. So it's not the best.
Well, we know you're all over the place covering just about every major program in Texas. Thanks for making time for us. Sam Kahn Jr., why don't you tell everybody where they can find you and follow you, Sam?
Yeah, theathletic.com on our college football page. We got a lot of our great coverage there. You'll find all my stuff there, and on Twitter at SKhanJr, SKHANJR.
Thanks. We'll keep you posted on the Texas forecast, and we hope you'll come back on at some point. Sam, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Well, that was a fun interview with Sam Kahn Jr. We're so thankful to him. He covers Baylor. He said he's on his way to Texas Tech. He looks at Houston, Texas, Texas A&M. I mean, he's all over the state. But like you said, he grew up there. But what a fascinating conversation, because, as I said, we're in Big Ten country. I know we talk a lot about Penn State. We talk a lot about the Big Ten. But we love college football. And, Dan, one of the most fascinating storylines going into the fall is this Jimbo Bobby Petrino saga. There he is.
I have to say.
By the way, keep that card. That's
we're going to use it throughout the season.
Yes.
Going back to when we would make picks weekly for college football, oftentimes we'd find ourselves picking these Texas schools. And so knowing the storylines coming in is going to be important for what we decide to pick here coming up in the fall. And I think what is so tantalizing right now about the Texas A&M program, they didn't really have an answer quarterback last year. They couldn't figure it out on offense. They were a low-scoring team, but we talked about it. You could see some flashes. And whether it was Jimbo's resistance to change, a lot of people said his offense is out of date. He doesn't have Jameis Winston anymore. Was he the reason why his career took off at Florida State? And is that the only reason? So now you bring in this guy on a motorcycle. You bring all his baggage into College Station. There it is.
and there's a lot of baggage there.
There's a lot of baggage, but the man knows ball.
Yeah.
And that's what that all comes down to in the SEC. And so my question is, if things go off the rails again, is there a mid-season change? This is the issue when you bring in a former head coach as a coordinator, because that's always kind of looming in the background.
Are you suggesting a mid-season change at what? OC or head coach?
Head coach.
Well, it depends on what the price of oil is.
I was going to say
in October.
These boosters don't want to wait around. I mean, that's potentially the difference here between, say, a Big Ten school and an SEC school. They're not afraid to pull the plug if they don't like what they're seeing, because they've invested so much into it.
Well, now I think it's an $80 million buyout plus. So, but again, they
seem to matter.
They want results. And I will ask you, and of course we'll be talking about this a lot going into the season, but do you think this will work?
It depends on the talent. I appreciated how much Sam was bringing up the talent on the field, because you could coach as well as you want to coach, but the kids out there have to execute and they have to buy into you. So Bobby Petrino comes with the baggage, obviously, but he obviously also has a reputation of high-scoring offense, fun offense, and it all takes is a hot start. If they start out slow the first week or two, it could get ugly. It really could get ugly.
They seem to have the quarterback position figured out now. But I think the real question is, as chippy as Jimbo was in that opening presser, is he going to be like that with Petrino if Bobby starts doing things that he doesn't like? Can he really take his hands off? Meanwhile, compare that to this past week where he was joking with him. He was winking, as I mentioned to Sam. He was saying his dadgummits. He seemed more like Bobby Bowden, his mentor. He just seemed looser. Is that because spring ball's over? He likes what he's seen. Does he really believe
now
now that
confidence now?
Right, that maybe I can be the CEO. I can back off. I kind of like it up here. Bobby's doing his thing. Defense is doing their thing. I'm good. These are questions, like Sam said, we're not going to be able to answer, but he did seem looser this week.
I agree. He seemed looser. He was more of a soundbite this week than he was before. As I said it in the interview, I just wonder how much he's taken out of Saban's playbook, because Saban plays with the media all the time. He kind of gives them a little bit of personality at times, and then he's gruff. And I just think
he's got a new hair color, by the way. Did you see that?
I did not see that. Interesting.
Reddish.
Okay. Well,
Nick Saban, that is not Jimbo.
Crimson in the hair, huh?
He's got the crimson in the hair.
So I just wonder, what are games? What's the quiet confidence? How does he feel going into this season? I mean, they have a brutal schedule every single year, and so
kind of looks like your hair.
Huh.
It does, which is not his natural
Maybe
color.
I should get into the college football realm.
Anyway, I'm sorry, you were saying.
No. I think how much of it is quiet confidence? How much is it building the roster back up?
Yes.
What he has. Did the negative energy from the team get released? So many questions. And
Well, that's a good question because there was a lot of negativity, but they were still able to turn that into that late victory over LSU.
yes.
So I don't know.
A good Brian
I mean,
Kelly team, mind you.
Yeah,
I mean, they were no slouches. I have a question for you. This is kind of more of a philosophical question. Is there really that much of a difference between the Penn State program and the Texas A&M program? There's a lot of parallels here. I mean, Penn State went through a downturn, 2020, 2021. Recruiting took a little bit of a hit. Questions about the head coach, questions about how much he's making. Can we get an OC in here that knows what they're doing? Seems pretty familiar, and Penn State dug out of that hole. Now the question is what happens this year, but could it be a very similar situation?
In those surface ways, yeah, I think there's some similarities, but I also think there's
A lot of expectations.
Yeah, a lot of expectations, but that I think any FBS program has that. I also think, though, that both teams have a quarterback now that they trust, even though, we have yet to see Alar in true game fashion, and same with Jimbo's guy. But listen, I ultimately think it's a different world down there. There's a lot more pressure on Jimbo than on James Franklin. And I think with the oil barons down there and with Jimbo's big contract, they have to perform. The level of competition is also stiffer. And I know Big Ten people don't necessarily want to hear that. I mean, look, there's no tougher gauntlet than the Big Ten East. It is tough. But I also think when you look at Alabama, LSU, some of the teams that Jimbo's going to have to face, Auburn, with Hugh Freeze now. That's a murderer's row of coaches and talent. And so in that way, perhaps it's very similar as well. But I do think as long as Jimbo, if Jimbo wins 9 games this year, he's fine.
I think he's fine, too. It's just a question of if you slide back from that,
Correct.
What begins to happen. You mentioned the talent, and this is always the lifelong debate, SEC talent versus Big Ten talent. And, based on what Sam was describing, I think I would salivate if we got some of those 4- and 5-star recruits that they're getting. And he mentioned another important part about Texas and Sark, the guys up front. The guys up front look bigger, meaner, ready to go, and that's kind of what Penn State fans have been waiting for.
Yeah, but let's talk about that. If from what I've been hearing, Penn State bringing back probably the best O lineman in the conference
in the Franklin era, maybe
maybe one of the best in the country. The lines look good. Penn State picked to be top 5, top 10. Could very well compete against an Ohio State program that has a lot of questions. They get Michigan at home. So I think the lines that we're used to at Penn State are beefed up. They're looking better.
I agree they are.
The one thing that we didn't get into with Sam, but this could play with it as well, and I think we've seen this. You can get a lot of 4- and 5-star guys, Dan. And I was thinking the same thing as he was describing that, salivating over that. Here's the question, though. Is part of the problem last year with A&M that NIL came into that locker room, and all of a sudden everybody had a me attitude.
Egos.
And Jimbo maybe, just didn't have control of that, and all of a sudden, it's more of an I rather than a we.
Well, and that's why I brought up the negativity factor. How do you erase last year quickly? I think it's a taller task than people give credit for because it always starts with the culture. How's the feel of the place? What's the head coach preaching? Are the student athletes buying in?
And clearly, James Franklin hasn't really had that issue, luckily. I think 2020 was a really odd year for obvious reasons. But, you look at a leader like Sean Clifford. That makes a difference with
tight.
NIL. And I just think when you don't have that, you can start to see these locker rooms fall apart. That's the downside of it.
And the uncertainty.
And the
that
uncertainty.
brings.
So, listen, I think it was a fascinating interview. As usual, we continue to ramp up. We're going to be previewing the season all summer. We've got some great guests lined up. We're going to be talking about college football from now until it kicks off.
It'll be here before you know it. I know we got the NFL draft coming up. That kind of brings it back home to some of the talent in college.
In fact, why don't you tell everybody who we have on next week?
We are very excited to announce we have the Zach Berman, formerly part of the Philadelphia Inquirer, for those who know, and now with the Athletic for several years, detailing the Eagles. So we ask him a bunch of questions about what are the Eagles going to do? What's the plan? They're one of the more intriguing teams yet again in the NFL as we approach the draft. 2 first-round picks, what's Howie's strategy?
Yeah, and if you're an Eagles fan, you probably know Zach and his coverage, and he was nice enough to chat with us. Just some good nuggets there. We're going to give our thoughts and kind of preview what we think will happen with some of the other first-round picks, too. That is coming up next week with our NFL Draft edition of Weather Wagers.
That's right.
Will Rogers' chair be back on stage?
It's got to be a question. And
I think it's a tradition now.
He's going to get a warm reception, I'm sure.
That's a tradition, too.
Yes, it is.
We're looking forward. It's draft week, and then, of course, going into May, we're going to be talking more about the spring games, and there's always storylines to follow, and, of course, more Major League Baseball talk as well. But that was a fun interview. We thank Sam for stopping by. And, Dan, tell everybody where they can find us.
As always, you can find us on every podcast platform. Pick your favorite, like, subscribe, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon. And don't forget YouTube, too. We've got a lot of you on YouTube. We appreciate that. ABC 27 News, you can find us on YouTube. Plus, if you want to reach out to us, always Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, at Brett Thack, ABC 27, at Doppler Dan on those platforms. Again, you can find us. We're out there. We're plenty busy, that's for sure.
I'm going into my local CVS, and I'm asking for the Saban Tommaso color, and I'm going to try it out in the shower later. That's all for us, everybody. We hope you have a great week.
Take care. We'll see you.